Both of those truck routes would prevent them from going through downtown Northport, would keep them out of the intersection of Fifth and Main. So the conditions that were discussed at the planning and zoning meeting were the location, which will be on the far south end of the property, away from the buffer of trees at the north end of the property, and those two truck routes. And this would include whether or not the concrete trucks were loaded or empty. It would also include the trucks bringing materials to the site, because they would have control over that. Those, whether they were empty or loaded, they would go one of those two routes. So that'd be both for egress and ingress, and both loaded and empty for the materials coming in and the concrete going out.
And Mr. President, also, we had one citizen who has contacted me and maybe a couple other staff members that is in opposition to this. During the Planning Commission stage of this case, he did send some emails, correspondence that were read to the Planning Commission that was in opposition.
I do know we do have a citizen that may be representing maybe Ballard, I think, want to come and speak. But before we do, and thank you, Julie and Ron, for that. I want to make sure before we get started in the suspending of the rules, and of course, it's got to be unanimous. Just for clarification, M1, it's located in M1, but the conditional use based on the last planning and zoning meeting on the 12th, Councilman Roberts, basically, I guess it was denied or unfavorable. 3-3.
The specific conditional use clauses were not approved.
Yeah. So, but M1, you can't get around it, but the specific conditional use was in the last meeting, 3-3, which basically did not pass.
Correct, because the other items are already allowed in M1.
Already allowed. All right. So I'm trying to work through some mechanics now. Instead of suspending the rules first, I would like to hear from ballot representative. So if you would, please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Council. My name is Ross Wiggins. I reside at 11985 McPherson Landing Road, Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and I do represent Ballard Concrete for you here tonight. So I don't really know if you want my interpretation of what we're going to be doing there, or if you'd rather go ahead and hit me with some questions about our plans and our future there.
No, if it pleases Council and Mayor, I just really briefly kind of what you think the operations will be.
So we plan on employing around 20 people at that site with an estimated gross revenue of $1.5 to $2 million annually, which is a very low estimate. We should increase from there dramatically. We plan on using that site for 2 to 3 years, and then we will actually have outgrown it, and we plan on moving a little bit further, either north, northeast, or northwest, but staying inside Northport to facilitate where we feel like residential growth is going to be here in the next few years. So I've been in the industry for 17 years. I have dealt on numerous occasions with ADEM, EPA on what could have been problems but were solved before they got to that point. All you have to do is be very friendly to your neighbors, very caring, making sure that you keep your house just like they keep theirs, and that's what I did. Never had an ADEM or EPA fine or citation in 17 years of running ready-mix concrete plants. Besides that, we will be focusing 99% of the time on residential work, so we would adhere to residential construction hours from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. We wouldn't be disturbing any neighbors. And as Mr. Davis said, the footprint of the plant that we plan on erecting is small, and it will be located abutted to Dogan Steel on the southern end of the property. So we have a good bit of buffer to our west before you come to any residential areas, and we have a huge natural buffer with several acres and a wooded area to our north, which is really the only areas that we have neighbors.
You know, I'll let council and or mayor kind of chime in. I know we're asking for a suspension of the rules. Mr. Wiggins, I'm probably not comfortable with suspending of the rules just to allow it first, because I think it needs a little bit more consideration. I know staff has done a good job in trying to figure out some truck routes and through the planning and zoning. How long are you guys, what's the time frame in terms of being in operation? Meaning, I know Ballard Concrete, but what's at that location, what's the time frame? How long are you planning on being there? And
So, to be in operation, if we were to get the go-ahead, we would be able to ship concrete next week, if we were given the go-ahead. Realistically, we can't be there more than 2.5 to 3 years in total, just due to the growth that we have planned for that facility and for the growth potential for customers and this area. We will need to buy a bigger property that is situated on the Parkway, on 82, that's a little bit more amenable to light construction, to manufacturing, and that won't have residential close in proximity at that point. Now, I'm sure, like everything else, as the city expands and as people grow out, then we'll once again be encroached. But this spot is merely to get our name out there, to get some revenue for the city of Northport and for us, and to stockpile a little bit of land buying money so that we can get from there to somewhere else.
I know you mentioned that buffer in between it. I know exactly what you're talking about. I guess it's 24th Avenue. That's to the west, no, to the north of you.
Yes, sir, that is right.
So that's residential. So they're going to see it every day, and that's probably maybe one of the complaints that you've probably received just north of you in that area. A lot of houses are right there. Of course, we got Crestmont School just down the road from it. So that may be something that probably one of the. Even I hadn't looked at all through the emails. I've seen one or two that was sent just recently before 5 o'clock today. So that's one of the concerns that I did have. So I didn't know if members of council had anything they wanted to add to that before we decide to either suspend the rules or just address it through a first reading.
If I may, one of my former plants was a street over from Martin Luther King and directly abutted to Sonic Drive-In. I kept that facility where it did not bother our neighbors, and the volume there was probably 3 times what the volume of this plant would be.
Yes, sir.
So this is very manageable.
All right, council, I don't know if you had anything else. All right.
I don't believe any of us are against operating in the city as a business. We've now reached a quandary in the city where we have areas that are marked as manufacturing 1, and we discussed this in the Planning and Zoning Commission. They probably shouldn't be manufacturing 1 now. So you now are faced with, do you allow existing things to operate in those areas knowing that you've grown beyond that? I mean, I've only been here 5 years, and you've got both ends on both sides of the city that were probably the obvious terminus points of the city at one point on the east and the west side. So, and then when you take a look at have a hard time keeping the streets in decent shape with 2 wheels of traffic, and I think the patterns there. My problem is that any decision we make, it's a decision on what do we want that future land use in that area to be. How does this affect the existing residents and their quality of life, even for a couple of years? Third, we don't want to lose businesses, right? I think we're in kind of a quandary here, right? And as we spoke in planning and zoning, if you guys if we had a piece of property on 82 or something, it'd be perfect, right? We all agreed that I mean, if we all had a perfect globe to do everything we wanted to do, I'd win the lottery and I'd quit work and I wouldn't have to do this. But So I think that's part of the quandary, and I am not for suspending the rules because I think there is room for a further conversation. I understand you guys need to operate, but if we try and suspend the rules, let's say we suspend the rules and it passes, and then you vote on the thing and it fails, then we're really into trouble because that failure goes with that piece of property, and it's a year unless they change how they want the property platted. So now you've backed the process into a corner where even if we found a solution 3 months down the road, but because it was voted down here, we couldn't do anything for a year. So that's one reason if you try and go through this process fast, anytime a motion fails like that, it's gonna take another year unless it drastically changes. So I'm really leery of trying to suspend the rules. Do I think there's a solution to be had? I don't know. I wish I knew. Okay, and we spent a long time on this on Planning and Zoning Commission, right? And I think the split evenly demonstrates that the Planning and Zoning Commission, we have an M1 area that trucks can be in now, so we're kind of stuck. And you also have the other issue of the residents there. So I think the split clearly identified the quagmire we're in on this particular.
So to address the residents' concern, I know that initially, the information I was given is that the concern was more about the timing of the notice letter that the resident received. That's where we originally were, and there might have been some environmental concerns in there. Are there any other concerns that I could help address at this point?
I think we went over everything in planning and zoning, and everybody was properly notified. You guys did a great job with ADEM. You clearly defined the property you're going to be on, and just for council's sake, it's not the entire piece of property that goes all the way up the woods. You can't do it. They have a very limited ADEM permit. Current improved area, I guess is the best way to say it.
Excuse me, they've got a limited defined footprint already that was approved
And
by
that was
ADEM.
actually considered in this trying to shape a planning and zoning, trying to shape a motion around that those clearly defined items. But I do believe that the split vote exactly, magnifies the problem that we have with old zoning areas. Folks that want to do business, and applaud you for the time we got folks unemployed, and Lord knows we got people who would rather not work than work. I just don't know how we get around this issue.
You own the property? Who owns the property?
Mr. Mike Ballard owns the property. I was brought in to facilitate selling to the public. That's what I've done for the last half of my career, is dispatching, management, and they felt like I would help them in that.
So after 3 or 4 years, you move on, the property goes reverts back.
Yes, ma'am. 3 years is our maximum timeline to be there. We won't have the room that we need. We're not just gonna stuff trucks in there just because we have it. Our entire plan is to use this as basically a springboard to get another piece of property wherever we can define the most growth, whether it be North 43, northwest on 82, or northeast on 69, somewhere in that range. But we really see the growth in this county happening here. So this is where we want to be. It just doesn't we have property in South Tuscaloosa where we can put the plant right now, but then we're just driving through to get to where we feel like our customers are and where our work is. And we'd rather be here to support this city and support where our customers are instead of just setting up shop somewhere else.
What are the residents saying? Now, we've heard some things that the residents have concerns about.
Well, like I said, the only thing I'm aware of is that, as I saw it, the resident who was furthest away from us geographically at the corner of Main and 24th had an issue with the timing of the first notice given out by, I think, Planning and Zoning. He didn't feel like he received sufficient notice to look into the issue. And I could be mistaken, but I also felt like he had some environmental concerns, which I was more than happy to address. I reached out to Ms. Ram and asked her to put me in contact with the individual, and I'm sure she did. I never heard from him. I really wanted to be able to speak with him and allay his concerns, but I think that he might rent that house out. I don't think he actually resides there. So I don't know what other concerns were brought up, but once again, if it's environmental, if it's noise pollution, if it is anything that I can help address, I'd be more than happy to. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Wiggins is right. I did send that resident his contact information. He said I did send that to him. Obviously, he has not gotten in touch with Mr. Wiggins. Also, one other point I'd like to make is the conditional use approval would run with the land and not be specific to Ballard Concrete. So if they were to sell to someone else, that conditional use approval is still on the table. It does not go away.
Yep.
I don't know if it would work this way, but if it would alleviate some of the council's fears, we could put a 36-month timer on it.
Well, as we discussed in planning and zoning, conditional use cannot have a time. It goes
Yeah.
with the property.
Goes with
Yeah.
the land.
And that's a problem, and we discussed that in planning and zoning. It actually would be great in some cases where you have an existing business where you go, I'm giving you 12 months to operate, but after that, we're gonna come lock the door. Unfortunately, that's not the way the land laws work here in Alabama, and that conditional use stays with it.
We want to do whatever we could to help.
I wish we had a piece of property we could swap with you.
Yeah. The thing with the conditional use is my just concern, because once you leave, it's with the property. It's gonna be there. And of course, I know Councilman Roberts, he's on our planning and zoning, he's our rep, so I think the suspension of the rules is concerning to me, just because if we move too quickly on it, honestly, Mr. Wiggins, we're gonna miss something with maybe getting some more information from staff. They've done a really good job in trying to figure out maybe truck routes and things of that nature, but I'm not comfortable suspending the rules to address it right then to go forward, just because you may have a citizen who may have some unique kind of, I guess, circumstances or even concerns that we could try to address before we suspend the rules and try to vote on a conditional use. And if you vote on the suspension of the rules and you get voted down, then, it's just, you'd be wasting that process, in my opinion. But didn't know if we had any further comments or discussion. All right, so Ron, and thank you, Mr. Wiggins. I didn't know if you had anything further or.
If there's anything further that I can do, I'm more than happy to do it to allay concerns, but past that.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right, Ron, and thank you, Julie. Thank you. Ron, so if we don't suspend the rules, obviously it's on the agenda for a first reading. So there again, it allows you to address it as you would normally would, correct?
Correct. Someone can offer for first reading, and you can also listen to the gentleman, I believe, is here tonight if you wish to.
I'm sorry, Ron.
You can also listen to the gentleman that's here tonight in opposition if he's present.
Come on up, and please state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, it's Rush Saban, and on the corner of 24th and Main. And, it's not just me that may be in opposition to this. It's actually several neighbors, and I took the time to speak with some of them who were very disconcerted over the fact that this may take place. And on standing on one of the neighbors' properties, I could see the plant, and I could see the stalls where, the alleged, product was to be stored. And to me, it's just kind of, crazy you know, to see those houses and that plant right next to each other. It's just kind of crazy looking. You know, there's no amount of dust that is considered safe. And, you know, promises can be made to mitigate dust,